The Mandela Effect's namesake. Many Mandela effects are the result of a widespread misreporting or common editorial habit, e.g. Fruit Loops, Jiffy, Oscar Mayer, Looney Tunes, blah, blah, that reinforced incorrect memories in readers' minds. This works brilliantly for brand-based Mandela effects, but when it comes to the Mandela effect's namesake, Nelson Mandela's supposed death in prison in the 1980s, we run into a problem. There's no news article from a major outlet actually declaring that Nelson Mandela died before 2013. So this kind of,
destroys my theory in a way.
Well, yeah.
Until we get into it.
Mandela's story wasn't misread. It was emotionally resolved. Death was inferred, not reported. Yeah.
You don't have to try to read those news articles. It's just, I pulled a bunch of them, and it's interesting what they were doing. Yeah.
So, semantic priming and association is something that's explained as news stories, often placed Mandela's name near words like death, violence, and hopelessness, even without direct claims. Our brains link repeated pairings. So Mandela plus death starts to feel familiar and later remembered as a fact. Emotional closure from heavy framing. 1980s media coverage was emotionally intense. Funerals, bans, and executions, repeated headlines like "No hope for Mandela's release" or "Sentenced to death tomorrow" pushed our brains to mentally close the loop, and many simply assumed he died in prison. And then, as we discussed earlier, memory fills in the gaps. Like the scrambled word reading example, the brain fills in unclear details with context. So when asked what happened to Mandela back then, years of bleak coverage led the mind to answer, he must have died, even if they never saw those words. And there's a couple of examples of some articles here.
I looked at hundreds of them, and I was thinking back to that time. So why would I remember it that way? Well, I was going to college full time and working full time, very little sleep. So basically, just scan the headlines in the newspaper. So of course, I'm gonna, not spend time on all the details and remember it wrong. So I wonder how many people that's true for.
That's in contrast to all the free time you have now.
But I don't get graded on this stuff.
True. Now, the reverse Mandela effect, when truth is forgotten on purpose. That could be a whole show on that. Not all memory errors are about seeing something that wasn't there. Sometimes people don't see what was because they've been trained not to. For decades, pilots, military officials, and scientists hesitated to report unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, out of the fear of ridicule or involuntary career change, or career damage, rather. The belief that UFOs aren't real became so culturally dominant that it erased honest accounts from the conversation. It isn't a false memory. It's a culturally suppressed reality. And you could thank a lot of that. You can thank the church for a lot of that. They can't be aliens. They can't be people other than us.
Well, and then the other thing too, so many of these like black ops and things like that. I mean, it's just now getting disclosed, some of this stuff. And, and even now, a lot of these people are afraid to say anything for being viewed as tinfoil hattie. Yeah. So it still goes on. I've got a couple other ideas on this one too.
Wait, what is it you used to say? Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get me.
Right?
That's true.
You used to say that to me all the time.
That's true. Oh, man. Here's more examples of the reverse Mandela effect, a.k.a. when truth is forgotten on purpose. The Mothman Panic of 1966 to 1967. What was suppressed? Dozens of credible witnesses in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, reported seeing a winged humanoid before the Silver Bridge collapse. Why it faded? News media covered the tragedy but downplayed or dismissed the entity. The myth was folded into folklore, not inquiry. That was a really good movie, too.
It was, and that's one of those. That's one of those for me that it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know if it was like an actual Mothman or what it was, but a lot of people kept saying that they saw this. And so it's like, maybe it's like seeing Jiffy instead of Jiff or whatever, but everybody was seeing something, and that, in my opinion, should have been looked into.
Yeah, should have.
So, and this whole reverse Mandela effect, that's a term I made up. It's not a real term.
Oh,
but it
look,
seems
you're
to
coining
apply.
phrases and everything. Past life memories in children, studied but dismissed. What was suppressed? The University of Virginia has documented over 2,500 cases of children, often between the age of 2 and 6, some of whom were called past lives, with verifiable details such as names, hometowns, and death circumstances that matched real deceased individuals. Why it faded? Well, despite rigorous documentation by researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia, the mainstream scientific community has largely ignored or mocked the findings. Even parents often discourage children from speaking about these memories, leading to early repression. And why does this matter to the reverse Mandela effect? It's not a false memory. It's an actively forgotten truth, a form of institutional amnesia, where the data exists, but the system refuses to integrate it.
That Ian Stevenson, their research is, we discuss on one of the Wednesday night shows. It's very interesting. He used a scientific method. He had some people challenge. He was able to prove that he wasn't making this stuff up, that some of these little kids actually were saying things that there's no way that they could have known.
Right, yeah.
And so, it's sad that people say, well, that doesn't exist, but, it does.
Meta conclusion. When the copy becomes canon. Okay, first you got misprints, repetition, and emotional framing equals false memories, often on a massive scale, like GIF and all that. Culturally repressed memories and institutional amnesia create a reverse Mandela effect, now forever referred to as the RME.
Yes, I love it. We've got a new thing. You better copyright it, Al.
I know, right? The brain did its job with flawed data. That's basically what it comes down to. What was that line from? God, yeah. What was that line from that movie back then? That line from that movie.
Purple.
Purple. Yes, this is my brain fogging out on me. Men in Black. To where
yes.
Yeah, where Agent K is talking to Will Smith and he says 1,500 years ago everyone knew that, and then he went on with this thing, imagine what we'll know tomorrow.
Yep.
So yeah. Your memory has been debugged. Boom.
That's our conclusion of that. So
yeah.
For me, I think this is a really big problem, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because look at now, it's like Gulf of America, we're supposed to call it, instead of Gulf of Mexico.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Exactly. But, you see how just changing words, and some people will just go along with it, others won't.
Yeah.
And then when you want to use that to control other people, I think it's very dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't the reverse Mandela effect what's basically happening with our government right at the moment? They're putting
it is.
It never happened.
Yes, and that's why I brought that up.
I heard about that. That's why you flood on every channel, even if there's no way you actually care if you're on that channel.
Yeah.
But you're trying to get that audience.
Mm-hmm.
And they blanket coat these implanted ideas that this was his idea, even though it went into law the year before. Biden did it. He gets to sit there and take credit, and they keep flooding the media with that. So now you believe that.
Exactly.
It's frustrating now. How far we've come with AI now is scary.
Oh God, yeah.
It's harder for us as we age that we do suffer memory issues. It makes it 100 times worse when things are very inconsistent, because then we get confused. You got to remember, for every decade, you lose more space that you know what is going on in.
Right now, I'm in this room.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and then throw a traumatic brain injury on top of that. I mean, I had lost decades of memory. People could just tell me stuff and I would believe them because all that memory was wiped out after a TBI. And then some of it's coming back now. So that's why I like books, to be honest with you. They're tangible. They're harder to just manipulate, although you can manipulate books too, or manipulate information in books, but it's less likely than with AI, which is going to become AGI. And then this constant visual media. That was it you guys that said, or was it on a Wednesday show, that all you have to really do is repeat something 3 times and somebody will believe it?
Yeah. And it would also, if you're repeating it around any of your devices, whatever you're discussing shows up in your shopping feed, in your news feed, in your whatever you're talking about. They're trying to get you involved in whatever they have going because you're being like targeted marketing.
So you're going to have peanut butter ads, Fruit Loops.
Actually, our feed is now going to be full of Mandela Effect videos. We're going to get flooded with them.
It's true how that
listening to you, and I made a joke about it, and Siri laughed, and Alexa laughed.
I would just say, in general, I don't trust the human memory. Just because
I don't either.
It's too easy to knock us around, and then as we age, well, those things that were really harsh and made you feel gross at the moment now have been 30 years ago, and you think about it differently, and it doesn't seem like it was that bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So even what you remember probably didn't happen the way you think it did in some ways.
Yeah.
You just got to be able to look back at it and go, okay.
Oh, technically, now Kim writes in, technically it could be called the Gulf of the Americas, since Mexico is part of North America. Yeah, I've had this, Kim, I've had this conversation with a lot of people. There are over 200 countries in the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
we just called it the Gulf too, where I'm from.
Yeah.
And again, we're from Florida.
But good, thanks. This is what being married is all about. I get an itch to scratch.
Kim raises a really good point there. It
exactly.
Makes sense. And that's not divisive or hateful or anything. Just call it the Gulf, or the Gulf of the Americas.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the problem with this stuff now. I mean, it's pretty innocent until it's used as a weapon. And that's where I have a problem with this. And, people are walking around living in very different realities. And even you get a group of people at a reunion and you talk about an event 20 years ago, all of us have a completely different memory of whatever happened. Yeah. But then when it's in the current sphere and actively put out there, so that people in real time are believing in 2 separate realities, that's a problem.
It is. And my brain is convinced that 20 years ago was the 80s.
I had to think about that. That makes sense to me until I thought about it. It's true. And, and that's another reason I wanted to bring this whole topic up too, is that I'm watching this pattern as we do the Cosmic Fold Paranormal Highway, how similar so many of these stories are.
Yeah.
From state to state to state. Mm-hmm. And so were these things based on movies, or was it just word of mouth? Oh, I saw that and it's a good story, and you kind of like the fishing tale, and then you repeat it, and then it spreads and it becomes your own personal experience.
This is why those videos are so important. But as Dave mentioned, with the way AI is now, it's very, very difficult to ascertain whether or not something, even if it looks like footage from the old black and white era, it could still be fake. I have an app on my phone called Super 8, and it's a photo manipulation app. I've had it for about 7 or 8 years, and you just film something on your phone, and it turns it into what looks like an authentic, 8mm movie from like the 60s and 70s, or you can even have it go older than that to look like the old movies from the 20s and 30s, and it is so authentic looking. It's just so authentic looking. So it's hard to trust your own brain.
Well, and then AI is like filling in the gaps on everything. Like, we use Microsoft Word work-wise, right? And so now it just pops up, Copilot does. I can summarize this document for me. Let me write this document for you. It's like, no, I don't want you to. I want to write this so I know, what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And so the more we get overwhelmed with a machine doing all of our thinking for us, it makes it even harder to discern what's real and what's not.
Yeah, it's crazy that, that when I'm putting something on the marketplace, for example, I want to sell something, it always asks me, would you like AI to write the ad for you?
Yeah.
Like, no, I can write an ad. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'll do it myself.
So next week we'll go back to because Connecticut really does have a lot of kind of cool stories.
Part 2.
Yeah, but I just wanted to take a break from doing that. Doing those, and it's like, I can only take so many cryptids per month.
I hear that.
Now the haunted houses, those are different, especially if it's got a backstory.
Oh no, those are very cool. Those are very cool. We discussed over and over again on this program about how certain circumstances or situations or locations give you different, you get the heebie-jeebies, the hair in the back of your head stands up, you can feel a heaviness, whatever. And that's very real. I don't think it's at all.
I think that empathy or that sense, this, your gut feeling, whatever that is going to become more and more important. Because you sort of intuit sometimes with an AI generated video or picture or whatever. It's like something about it doesn't feel, you almost have to go by your feelings instead of logic to discern what's real and what's not, which is exactly the opposite of what we've been taught. You need to be logical. Your feelings will deceive you, but I'm starting to think we may have to turn that around a little bit.
And that circles back to the Mandela Effect.
Yeah. Which again, that was emotional feel. But if you can look things up though, and just have the humility to say, you know what, I might be wrong. Let me look that up.
Yeah. Okay, but right now what's going on is a whole bunch of documents are being removed and censored, and things are being changed.
Yes, in the National
Archives.
It's a huge thing going on, and trying to look at a different perspective of history of what has gone on in the last decade. And so that's what I mean. I don't know how they're going to be able to decipher at their level when they go back to sort this through.
I don't get it. I know that.
That's why I keep paper copies of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because I have to do a lot of historical research to in the area that I work to prove a water right.
Right.
And so we've got documents from the 1800s and that kind of stuff. And we keep the paper copies because of that. But you think, to your point, Dave, like Oklahoma, isn't it? Where they're just completely rewriting recent history. And that's supposed to be taught in the public schools now.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, when they taught us in elementary school a lifetime ago, that the the reason for the Civil War was slavery. They taught this in New York City public schools. Now you can find it's getting harder and harder to find that. They're coming up with all kinds of other things for it. But that is not a Mandela effect. You can still find those old textbooks on